we're back. Yes, we are. We're back. This is your host, Brother T. Glad to see you guys back. Thanks so much for joining us. The hottest show on Thursday night. Live on YouTube. ACIM. Who knew ACIM could be so interesting? It will blow your mind. It definitely blew my mind. The book we're going to be studying tonight is called A Course in Miracles. Thank you so much for joining in. I just want to share a picture of the book with you here. And we call it the Black Pearl book. I don't know if that's the right name or not, but this is the Your Text version, and it's the jcim.net. I think last week I said .com, but it's actually jcim.net. And you can actually, the whole book is right there if you want to read it there. If you don't have a copy, you can actually start reading it there. You can follow along with the textbook or the workbook or the manual for teachers, which are all included in this. And you can also buy the book there as well. This is the Your Text version, which means it is the original transcript of A Course in Miracles. That was originally transcribed by Helen Schachtman before the Foundation for Inner Peace version, where some of the text, in particular through the first 5 chapters, was removed. And my mentor, in my understanding of A Course in Miracles, and I did study the Foundation for Inner Peace version. People call it the Blue Book. I studied that for several years before my mentor ultimately took me to this copy. And I definitely found more content in here that wasn't available in the other one. But they're both still A Course in Miracles, okay? You can't go wrong with either one of those editions. So I just want to say thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Brother T, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. We are live on the air, YouTube, and just want to say hello. Hi. Last week, we spent a lot of time talking with you online. If you want to find our YouTube channel, if you want to share it with somebody else, you can just tell them to go to True, T-R-U-E, Mind, M-I-N-D, Shift, S-H-I-F-T, .com. And that'll redirect them directly to our YouTube channel or my YouTube channel. And again, I'm Brother T. So we have a few people with us tonight. We're live in the studio that we're in right now. And so we're going to have some fun. So I just wanted to see if anybody has anything in the book that you've been looking at, talking about, arguing about, cussing about. No, I didn't say that. Did I say that out loud? Right? Because it's a little challenging, can be a little challenging. And the whole intention of what I try to do as a teacher of A Course in Miracles is simply, and the Course in Miracles says that the teacher is the learner. So the reason I'm doing this work is so that I can continue to learn what A Course in Miracles has to offer. Right? But tonight, since no one's raising their hand about a topic that they want to talk about, I want to go to the Manual for Teachers. We've been skipping around a little bit. Last week we were in the textbook, in the workbook. I think the week before we were in the textbook. And I just want to flip through the Manual for Teachers. It's got some great stuff in here. And we won't start right from the beginning, but what are the characteristics of God's teachers on page 7. So I want to talk about characteristics of God's teachers. Now, would that include you? Are you one of God's teachers? Well, of course you are. We all are. Everyone is a teacher. You are always, as A Course in Miracles teaches us, you're always teaching what you believe in. You're always teaching your thought system. So you have a thought system of the world. We could call it the egoic thought system. It's really a thought system of fear. And I like to say that fear and guilt are two sides of the same coin. You can't get too far away from guilt from this ego mind because that's its foundation. And it's a game of separation. I introduced my wife this week and we watched the movie Jumanji. It was a lot of fun, and we laughed a lot about it. It's the latest version. And then just this week I saw that there's another version of it. I think they call it The Next Level that's coming out, I think in December or something, Jumanji. But anyway, the point of the discussion is that the Jumanji, the movie, is really kind of our story in the sense that once you get in the game, you can't get out of the game until you win the game, right? And how do you win the game? Ultimately, at the end of the day or at the end of the game, the way you get out is to fall back in love with yourself. Now that may sound like that shouldn't be too difficult. Oh yes it is, right? Because the mind of the ego, the mind of fear and guilt, really doesn't like you. It pretends that it likes you, right? But in A Course in Miracles, it's called special love, special hate, right? It wants you to believe that you're special. And when you don't live up to its requirements of your specialness, when you, quote unquote, fail in its judgment, and yes, it's a judge master, it loves to judge all the time, then it doesn't like you, right? And it really doesn't want you to be happy, and it wants to punish you. And all those things are really the, A Course in Miracles says that the ego operates between vicious and suspicious, or I should say, let me start with suspicious to vicious, right? On the low end of its most subtle operating mode, it's just to be suspicious of everything. Judge, right? On the upper end, it goes into full-on viciousness, and if you don't make me happy, then I have a right to murder you. Yeah, it's kind of that crazy. So I know you don't want to murder anybody, I get that, but there's an aspect of us, every one of us, that we've had people that we've known in our life at one time or another, it's like, oh, I just hate that person. And in the right circumstances, in fact, if we've had multiple lifetimes, if you can imagine that that's possible, of course, in Miracles, we could say we've already all been everywhere and every when, and that we've all murdered people, that we've all been in wars, we've all been murdered. After a few hundred lifetimes, it's very possible, right? Given the history of our advancement in civilization, and especially in the Western culture, and even in the religion itself that has evolved over the last 2,000 years. I was just reading today that paganism was outlawed by Theodius in 391 AD, paganism. So that was popular before then, right? So we keep changing the rules, we keep changing the game. So we're just going to jump into what are the characteristics of God's teachers, because the truth is we all are teachers. We're teaching in every expression what we have faith in. Again, we have two choices, fear or love, and it's two states of mind. And the surface traits of God's teachers are not at all alike. I want to read that again. The surface traits of God's teachers are not at all alike. They do not look alike to the body's eyes. They come from vastly different backgrounds. Their experiences of the world vary greatly, and their superficial, quote-unquote, personalities are quite distinct. Nor at the beginning stages of their functioning as teachers of God have they as yet acquired the deeper characteristics that will establish them as what they are. God gives special gifts to His teachers because they have a special role in His plan for atonement. So let's talk about atonement for a couple of minutes. That's worthy. That's board worthy. We'll put that on the board, right? So what is atonement? And since we have a live audience in the room with us tonight, we get to play, right? So you guys get to answer the question, what is atonement? Don't look in the book. At one minute. Okay, what does that mean?
No idea. To be at one.
To be at one. Microphone, please. So they can hear your beautiful voice.
To be at one.
To be at one, what does that mean?
To be with one with Source, Spirit, God.
Okay, would that be the water bottle? Because this is the water bottle. Would that be the water bottle?
Sure.
Okay. What would that be like? You get yourself, you feel like you're being backed into a corner.
Yes. So I don't raise my hand in class.
Okay, so now you can add, so let your husband, you're going to have to fill in your answer now, John. What's atonement to you? There's no wrong answer.
I guess you are at one with God, so you're not separate. You're not separated. But I don't know. We're going to find out. You're going to tell us something.
Okay,
How about splitting that another?
let's do this.
How about splitting that word another way? Atonement. In other words, a tone is. Think of it maybe as a sound or vibration that we are in sync, if you will, or in the same sound with God, perhaps.
Oh, okay, I like that. So it's a frequency, a vibration of being in a vibration, a resonance with God. That's interesting. Okay, what about I got to get my highly sophisticated eraser here. What about this atone? Is there anything like atone for your sins in the Bible? Anybody ever heard that expression? I'm hearing some no's, maybe out there, maybe where you are. To atone for your sins. In my upbringing, in traditional Christian upbringing, Protestant, you bad boy. You know, you've got to atone for that, which means that you've got to balance this. You've done something wrong. And so you're worthy of punishment. And if you're really, really, you know, not behaving as God would want you to, like you're not worshiping God, or you're worshiping false idols, or, you know, you're just generally not a nice person, then your atonement could be to be sentenced to hellfire damnation for all of eternity. Sounds like fun, right? Could be. The necessary atonement for your sins, right? This is how I first learned this, that God was vengeful, jealous, wrathful, bitter at times, maybe, frightening, you know. And we talked about that, I think, maybe a little in the last couple of episodes about, you know, being God-fearing and so forth and those kinds of things, right? But let's elevate the conversation. Let's say no to that, okay? I do like your suggestion maybe of being in tone. We could say being in tune with God, right? You know, like because a tone is a vibration, a frequency, a key, okay, on a piano or a guitar. So we could say atonement, being in the frequency, and that actually has, I think, it's very discussion worthy from the perspective that what we're really working at is to raise our consciousness. Now, part of what we teach in our quote-unquote ministry is about levels of consciousness. And we have 4 broad levels of consciousness, and I'll draw them out somewhere, maybe over here, and I'm just going to put them up here real quick. And we're going to do this. Okay, so there's 4 broad categories. We've got V for victim consciousness. Okay, and so this is a vibration. It's a tone, right? And we attune ourselves to this vibration by, how do we do that? I don't know, watch the news in the evening. You're kind of attuning yourself to victim consciousness. Read the newspaper. You're attuning yourself to victim consciousness. It's a frequency, it's a vibration. It actually can be measured through kinesiology. Dr. David Hawkins, groundbreaking work back in the 90s, I want to say 96, called Power versus Force. And he did kinesiology study by muscle testing. It's very popular today. It's well documented that yes, this is really something that's measurable. That the body can be measured through kinesiology to give us truth, you know, of either a false or positive reading. This is about 78% of the world is vibrating here, if you will. And in the United States, it's about 50-50, okay? The next level up, as we graduate through consciousness, would be the M&M level. I like M&Ms, right? But it's really manifestor manipulator, okay? And this is really what I like to call the domain of the ego mind, right? We're kind of in these 2 levels Here we've graduated, but here we're operating at a higher consciousness. But here in the manifestor manipulator level, we're literally taking responsibility for our thoughts. We've moved into the idea that thoughts are things. Another one of our principles. Thoughts are things. They have a tone, they have a vibration, right? But it's a higher frequency than the base frequency of victim consciousness. And so what happens here, victim consciousness, about 70% of the world's here. Interestingly, here you are in a vibration of not joy, a different word comes to mind, but you're in this energy where you're only experiencing joy in your life, I'm going to say roughly 23% of the time, 24% of the time, somewhere around there. The rest of the time, life's pretty miserable, right? And we can devolve just like we can evolve. And most people, according to Dr. Hawkins' work, literally whatever level they come into incarnation with, they stay at that level for pretty much their whole life. They only advance by 1 or 2 or 3 points on this scale, and the scale is, I'm going to say at the low end is about 20 log 10, and on the upper level it's 1,000 log 10. So the point is that it's a big deal to just move 1 or 2 points, really, in the grand scheme of things. So, but most people, their whole life, they stay in whatever energy their family is, whatever the construct, the vibration is, the tone that they come into incarnation with, they pretty much stick with that their whole life. They don't really move beyond it very much. But by pursuing a spiritual path, right, you can do quantum leaps and advance by 50 points or more just in one workshop or one teaching, like A Course in Miracles. You can advance by hundreds of points on that scale. So I'm going to say here our magic number to move between victim and manifestor manipulator is 200 log 10. And this is where we are starting to take responsibility for our life. This is where people start signing up for extra classes or maybe joining a spiritual community or whatever. But they're really, through their a willingness to start operating at a level of self-honesty, which we can say and call integrity. It's really the level of integrity. It's also a level of courage, where we're really becoming courageous enough to not just blame everything that's going on in our life on somebody else or the world or whoever, and starting to take responsibility for what's going on. And so we go through these levels here, and each one of these levels, right, we go through levels in between those levels, if you will. So we could go from courage and integrity to willingness, to allowance, to acceptance, etc., and we keep moving up through that level. But again, this is the domain of the ego, these first 2 levels. But when we finally cross this level, and we're going to call this the 500 level, when we get to this level and move beyond these first 2 levels, this is where we start moving into what we call channel consciousness. Channel consciousness really is where we are starting to realize that we're not alone, that there's an inner guidance system. You might notice it or call it your intuitive self, right? You get that nudge to, for me, it's like when I'm leaving the house, if I look at my desk or something tells me to grab that extra set of keys or pick up my pocket knife or whatever, and I'm like, why would I? The other day we went somewhere and I opened the drawer to get the car keys and there was a screwdriver in there, and my intuitive self said, take the screwdriver, and I'm like, why would I need a screwdriver? I don't need a screwdriver. I couldn't imagine that I would need a screwdriver, so I didn't listen. Well, by the way, your intuitive self is always trying to help you, right? So listen, pay attention, right? That's the whole point. And when I got to where I was going, we were in this little cabin and there was a refrigerator there, and the freezer, the shelf on the door on the freezer was falling off, and guess what I needed? A screwdriver, a Phillips screwdriver. So anyway, kind of interesting that intuitive self, we begin to recognize that intuitive self is in fact communicating with us. There's this inner voice of wisdom, and we start to take more and more notice of it. So when we get to this level, we really have begun to accept that voice. We have begun to realize that we are not alone. And now we're starting to realize that duality is not our only experience. We're moving from duality to semi-non-duality at that level, okay? So here at 500, by the way, manifestor manipulator level, if 78% of the world is here, how much we got left there, right?
22.
Maybe 22%, maybe 21 and a fraction or so. So by the time we get to the channel level, let's just say for talking purposes, 20% of us are here. There's really, only, or even 21, there's only like 1% of the population of the world. And it's like, oh my God, well, but 1% of 7 billion people, that's still a pretty big number, right? I don't have my calculator with me, but that's still a pretty big number. But the point is that, yeah, it's starting to look like a pyramid as we move up, as fewer and fewer people in the population vibrating at those levels of consciousness, right? So the next level after that is mystic consciousness. And by the way, when we're at Manifestor Manipulator, we're appreciating and enjoying more joy. In fact, it goes from about 23% here up to over 50%, right? Immediately, we start having more fun. And people want to hang out with us. The victims want to hang out with us because when they hang out with us, they're having more fun. And we don't want to hang out with them because when we're hanging out with them, we're having less fun because they're talking about all their misery. Maybe, just kidding. You got to deal with family. And then, this level over here, right, channel consciousness, you're kind of blissed out most of the time. You're 70% plus, which you're experiencing joy and bliss most of the time. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be like that. I mean, you can still, and we cycle up and down in these different levels of consciousness. But ultimately, when we get to victim consciousness, mystic consciousness, not victim consciousness, at the top level, you're kind of in the world, but not of the world. At this point, you're kind of like the Jesus energy, if I can use the name and say, as he was saying, when you see me, you see the Father. He was the mystic. He was the channel. The ego personality self that lives here is no longer a part of who you be and how you express. You've really shifted into a completely different state of mind, right? And self-love, and this is capital S-E-L-F, love, capital L-O-V-E, self-love. This is where you truly are and have fallen in love with your true self, your higher self, right? And in A Course in Miracles, he says that self is nothing more than your right mind, your capital R, capital M, right mind. So this is the journey, the hero's journey, right? So atonement is the stair step as we march up the ladder, so to speak. We are walking up this ladder of consciousness, and as we evolve, as we elevate ourselves, and if you go to a city that's in the valley and you're hanging out in the city, but then you go outside the city and you go up to one of the hills or mountains around the town, and now you're still seeing the city, but you're seeing it from a different perspective, right? You're seeing it from a higher viewpoint. This is really how we begin to see the world as we evolve and advance as teachers of A Course in Miracles. So wow, we just really segued way off the road talking about atonement, but this is really important because atonement or at-one-ment, or we could say, as you've suggested, Don, attuning to this higher energy, right? So let's take a good deep breath. As the energy of the Creator in action, in perfect safety, we can release all tension. Now, say that to yourself, and I'll repeat it again. Let's take a good deep breath. As the energy of the Creator in action, in perfect safety, I release all tension. You feel that, yes? See, it's a shift. And we can feel it. It's like changing stations on the radio or the TV dial. You know, you go from the horror movie, victim consciousness, to the romantic movie, right? The channel consciousness, love. This level 500 is the love channel. How do you recognize it? Well, you recognize it, in our animals like your cat. When the cat is purring, that's where they are. When the dog's tail is wagging, that's where they are. And they have attuned themselves to that higher energy. It's pretty cool. And you recognize it. Yes, ma'am?
Can you say it again? As the energy?
As the energy of the Creator in action, I release all tension. In perfect safety, I release all tension. And let's add to that a little bit. Let's take another good deep breath. As the energy of the Creator in action, in perfect safety, I dissolve my mind into the perfect peace of God. Do you feel that lifting? See, you are the lifting. Think about that. You are the lifting anytime you're willing to shift your consciousness. And all it takes is a little attunement. It's like a guitar player who is tuning the strings and getting them in tune with each other. The attunement, right? Attunement. You tune your guitar strings so that when you strum the guitar, they're resonating in harmony. And it's pleasant. When you take that good deep breath and you make these affirmations, these attunements, and you say, as the energy of the Creator in action, who is that? That's you. What is that? That's you. You are the energy of love in action. But you have to give it your awareness. When you're distracted by what's going on in the body or in the world or anything outside of your physical self, then we're out of that energy most often unless we're looking at the world out here without judgment. In other words, we've attuned ourselves to this higher energy, and in perfect safety, we've released all tension, and we allow our mind to dissolve, in other words, the thinking egoic self, to dissolve into the perfect peace of God. That puts us right up here at 500 plus. And it's pretty cool. It's very cool. The body begins to relax. The body actually begins to heal. We let the day go. We let the worries go. The contraction of the day, the fear, the defense that we go through in the process of judging our brothers and sisters throughout the day brings our body into a level of contraction. Dis-ease, right? And that's the source of all dis-ease, is our thinking in lower levels of consciousness, right? So the atonement is to move from duality to semi-non-duality, ultimately to non-duality. So we could map that out on our little levels of consciousness, and we can say down here at victim consciousness, we are totally in the dimension of duality. Totally. We're kind of boxed in, we're trapped into, and we're giving all of our attention to this world that's coming at us where we have absolutely and feel like we have no control or convince ourselves and believe ourselves to be victims of the world. The next level would be semi-non-duality, is manifestor manipulator, because we're beginning to see that our thoughts are things and that we're connected to the world outside of us, right? And so as we evolve here, we move closer and closer to a state of joy and peace, and we allow the world. We don't get so hung up. We're not so judgmental, and we begin to manifest a different life. We're healthier. We tend to invest more in our relationships, and life just gets better. That's the great thing about what I like to call the spiritual edge that is provided to us through A Course in Miracles and this curriculum, the teaching of this curriculum. When you have a spiritual edge, you can navigate through life comfortably, literally, very, very comfortably. And so some things that really just knock people completely for a loop, and you would look at those things and just go, well, it's okay. It's going to be okay. I'm okay with whatever happens, and I'm going to allow it to be as it is. No judgment, just acceptance and allowance. And that's where we're dissolving the mind now of the ego into this peace that's offered through the spiritual edge of moving into higher consciousness. Cool stuff. So I think we only got through the first two sentences or something like that. So at the beginning stages of their functioning as teachers of God have as yet required the deeper characteristics that will establish them as what they are. God gives special gifts to his teachers because they have a special role in his plan for atonement. Their specialness is, of course, only temporary, set in time as a means of leading out of time. We only need time for the process of unlearning. But we've been taught by the world you need time for the process of learning. But the Spirit, the teaching of this curriculum, is really that we need time for the process of unlearning the mind of the ego's teaching, the teaching of the world, the idea of fear and judgment. Once we have done that, time literally collapses as an experience. We move more and more and more towards that experience as we evolve consciously. These special gifts, born in the holy relationship toward which the teaching-learning situation is geared, become a characteristic of all teachers of God who have advanced in their own learning. In this respect, they are all alike. So the specialness, the whole idea of specialness, begins to fall away very rapidly as we begin to realize that we, the personality self, is really nothing. We leave it behind. And we just literally melt and dissolve and merge the mind into this perfect peace that's provided here. So there is no specialness. There's only God. See, we're going from duality to semi-non-duality to non-duality. He also, when he says, born in the holy relationship, the holy relationship, and maybe we'll talk about it next week, but the holy relationship is such a foundational piece of content for us to grasp as we go through our understanding of A Course in Miracles. Because the opposite of that, if you will, would be the relationship of the world. The relationship of the world is called special relationship. And that would again be in this domain here, which is special love, which is a mask, kind of an imposter for special hate. See, the ego doesn't, as I said earlier, doesn't really like you very much. I'm sorry to tell you that. I know you want to be good friends with your ego. Well, you need that. Yeah, it's protecting you. I get all that. But the point is, it really doesn't like you because it wants it's your slave, and at the same time it wants to be your master. And it knows that there's some other experience available for you, but it can't see that. It's like the sleeping mind at night trying to figure out that you're safe at home in bed. It just can't tell that. It can't see that.
Or is it because the ego doesn't want to die too?
Well, it kind of does, yes.
Okay.
But death is not even, from what I've been told here by my teachers, is that the only aspect of you that can really ever experience death would be the ego self. Because ultimately it just kind of collapses. Why? Because you're no longer giving it your attention. But we look at death because the ego wants us to be afraid of everything, especially death, right? The death of the body would be the death of us, etc., etc. That's a lie. Fear is always a lie. It would be no more difficult for you than the sting you felt this morning when you woke up from the dreaming self. Because that self died this morning. It's gone. And you didn't wake up going, oh, it's gone, and it was so painful, and I died. That body, where is that body? You were a body all night long, right? Do you feel remorse or like, oh, I got to go back in there tonight, and I got to be that again, or I got to go fix that dream? No, you don't care, right? No, we don't. That's ridiculous, right? So if we can really imagine, yes, indeed, that is the truth, the only possible experience of death in any form whatsoever would be what you're experiencing every day, transitioning from one state of mind to another state of mind. That other state of mind died to you as an experience, as your ongoing present experience, dimensionally and as your reality. And so when we evolve, right, that self does want to fight and hold on. And we're seeing it globally now in the whole world. The energy of the whole planet is shifting. More and more people are waking up. And you might find as a teacher of God, right? As a teacher of God, you might find that maybe some people were pretty resistant because maybe you've been a course student for a while and you really like the course, but you found people with a lot of resistance to it and you're just like, it's all woo-woo and they don't want to hear from you. I mean, you know, they walk on the other side of the street when they see you come in. Maybe if you were really trying to impress people with your knowledge of A Course in Miracles, you know, like me, I've done that. Not a good plan, not a good plan. My family won't talk to me, you know, those kind of things. But they're now coming around. Why? Because even though they don't know it, the energy of our planet is shifting. The energy of our consciousness is shifting because of this work, I think, by and large, and the work that you're doing as teachers of God. And so people are more receptive. So don't be too timid. And if you might find if you just start sharing a few of these principles, you know, like thoughts or things and some of the stuff we talk about here on the Brother T YouTube channel, that people are starting to become receptive to this. And you don't have to beat them up with this heavy book, right? You can just help people realize that you have a spiritual edge because you've begun to understand principles that have led you out of these lower levels of vibration, and you've attuned yourself now to a higher understanding of self. You're beginning to fall back in love with yourself. And again, that's how you win the game. Right? I mean, that's really the winning of the game. All differences among the sons of God, and I like to say sons and daughters of God, children of God, nevertheless, in time it can be said that the advanced teachers of God have the following characteristics. So we're going to go into some of them. We won't get too far. As you can tell, we've only covered really like one paragraph, well, almost two, right? Because this all kinds of wraps around itself, right? And we're just having fun with the discussion. So before we go to this first characteristic of a teacher of God, any questions from you guys about atonement, what we've covered here, the levels of consciousness? I know I ran through this pretty quick. We do workshops on this, and I really need to. We're going to put maybe a class or something out on Udemy or somewhere so that you can go, and when we get that done, we'll make this available to you. We want to help you grasp this teaching simply because when you have that spiritual edge, you really can deal with life in such a magnificent way. And what I'm getting is the image of Jesus is out there with his disciples. I love Jesus, so you have to forgive me. But not the way that I was taught when I was younger, but what he's teaching with us here. But he had a spiritual edge, right? So he's out in the boat with his disciples, and a big storm comes up, and they're all freaking out, you know, and he goes to sleep, right? See, that's what I call a spiritual edge. Even the biggest storm well, like, what's bothering you guys? I don't get it. It's nothing, right? Because he knew that the experience he was having, that we're all having in this third dimensional world, is illusion. In perfect safety, as the energy of the Creator in action, in perfect safety. Get that? That's what that means. In perfect safety, I release all tension. So he's like, what's wrong with you guys? It's just a little storm. And they're like, you know. See, a spiritual edge. That's why you want this. That's why you want to get this material. It changes everything. And it brings so much joy. It's just amazing. Okay. So the first one is trust. It's a biggie, right? Mm-hmm. And you've experienced extreme levels of trust. And you've also experienced this absence of thinking. And I know when you did it. How could you know that, Tony? Because I know you've been in love. I know you fell in love. You met someone and suddenly your mind went to total peace. Your heart opened up. The energy of being with someone for the very first time, and you begin to realize that you're giving this person all of your attention, your mind begins to open up, and you guess what you did? You quit thinking. Yeah. And even before you realized it, you would give that person and did give that person perfect trust. Now, after 15 or 20 minutes, it might have started to diminish. But the point is, it's just like if you've ever like love at first sight kind of thing, and we've all experienced that. It might be, for that experience, for you might be when you had that kitten, or that baby or whatever, or that spouse or whatever it may be. But the point is that when the mind lets go of all the thinking and judgment, it just opens up and you become, here's the key, present. When you're present, then you are able to be aware of the energy of the Creator in action. That's you falling in love with yourself. How cool is that, right? So for that moment, and it can extend then again for hours, days, weeks, months, years, lifetimes. The relationship begins instantly in a profound, deep level of trust. You withhold judgment. And you never withhold judgment for anybody unless you what? Trust them. Right? And when somebody else doesn't trust somebody that you've fallen in love with, you know that, and you can look at those other people that are, remember, the ego is suspicious to vicious, and they're suspicious of someone that you're in love with, and they start, doing the blame game and judgment and all that, and you can look at that and go, well, that's crazy. I know this person. Get that? That's trust, right? So the foundation of every successful relationship, and we could say a holy relationship, and we won't get into it, we won't have time to get into it too deeply tonight. But the point I want to make is that he mentions holy relationship here for a reason, because a holy relationship is a relationship that's built on a foundation of perfect trust. And so the teacher of God, which is you, when you are attuned to your higher levels of consciousness, everything you're expressing is you being a teacher of God and being a learner, because the teacher is the learner. So it's like, winning the lottery. You got the ticket, right? And you get the prize. You get your cake and you get to eat it too, right? Because giving and receiving are one. We'll have a discussion about that one night too, right? So let's jump in. Trust. This is the foundation on which their ability, we're talking about teachers of God, ministers, that would be you. Though you may not claim it yet, I will, share with you that I was teaching A Course in Miracles and learning A Course in Miracles for quite some time, and other teachings that led me to it for a long time before someone said to me, well, that's your ministry. And that was the very first time that I ever considered it. And I was doing it and I didn't even know it. And you're doing it and you probably don't. And you may not yet claim it, but I promise you, you are always, as the Course in Miracles says, you're always teaching the truth, the thought system that you are vested in. And it can shift, right? We can go up and down in levels of consciousness based on whatever's going on in our life and what we allow or don't allow ourselves to do. So this is the foundation on which the teachers of God's ability to fulfill their function rests. Perception is the result of learning. In fact, perception is learning because cause and effect are never separated. Cause and effect are never separated. Giving and receiving are one. See things starting to sound familiar? Right? Because we're moving from duality to oneness. We talked about oneness. And so this is kind of giving us some of the pieces where we can begin to really have the ability to get our head around a concept of oneness, right? Everything that appears to be dualistic in the world can ultimately begins to collapse. So cause and effect are one and the same thing. It's immediate. Now we think, if I do this, then that. cause and effect, but it takes time, right? But in truth, it's instantaneous. The time that it's taking is for us to realize that it has happened or that it's occurring and it's manifesting. But in reality, it's instantaneous because giving and receiving are one, cause and effect are one. Perception is learning because cause and effect are never separated. The teachers of God have trust in the world because they've learned it is not governed by the laws that the world made up. This is huge. How many people today, if you're paying any attention to what's going on in our society, in Western culture here in the United States, politically, it's like drama, 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 and nobody's trusting anybody. Everybody's being questioned. The ego's suspicion level is as high as I've ever known it in my whole life. And maybe it's because I'm paying attention. I don't think so. I think it's more like a last gasp of the ego thought system. It's being exposed. Things aren't happening in the dark anymore. The light is being exposed on the systems that we've been, controlled by and through for millenniums, literally. And we're starting to see that people can't hide behind darkness anymore because we now have the ability to communicate instantly with each other around the world, because of our internet system and our social media system. So it's very important. People can be bad actors for a short period of time in darkness and privacy, but ultimately they're being exposed, and they can't do that, not successfully anymore. And thank goodness for that, right? That's healing. That's a good thing. So it's governed by power which in them but not of them. So let me back up. The teachers of God have trust in the world because they've learned it is not governed by the laws of the world made up. So he's saying the world is governed by a power, capital P power, capital W, which. So he's referring to God. He's referring to love. By a power which is in them, but not of them. Another way of saying that is you did not create yourself. You didn't create yourself. There's a power within you, which is you. The self that you fall back in love with as you begin to awaken to your majesty, your grandeur, your perfectness, your divinity, capital D divinity, your capital I identity. So the world is actually governed by a power which is much greater than the construct of a mind that's just making stuff up. It's not really, if you're wondering why it's so flexible and malleable and changes all the time, is because it's like a dream. Have you noticed that the dreams you have at night are flexible and malleable and changing all the time? I mean, one night I was walking down a sidewalk coming out of some porch from a house. I don't know the house, but I was coming out and I saw the sidewalk, and I'm starting to walk down the sidewalk, and a car pulls up and the door flies open, and there in the back seat is my mother and two of my sisters, and as I got closer, guess what? They were in a hot tub in the back seat of the car. Shifting patterns, right? Drama, drama, drama. I'm like, where'd you guys get this car and this hot tub? This is awesome, right? Yes, we have fun, right? That's my mom. It's just like her to show up in the back seat of a car in a hot tub. Yep, okay. So when this power has once been experienced, in perfect safety, I release all tension. That's the power. And once that power has been experienced, it's impossible to trust one's own petty strength again. You can still see this self. You still operate from this self. This is patterns that keep playing themselves out. Unconscious programming, patterns that keep playing. But what we're doing is reprogramming our unconscious mind through the thought system of A Course in Miracles. That's what this is. This is a mind training. Oh, don't let that scare you, because you've been going through mind training ever since you took your first breath here. And it's called the world, and it's continuously 24/7, nonstop, training, teaching about fear, about guilt, about all the stuff that the world has taught you. here's your opportunity to flip channels, to go to another channel, right? So we go from the FM channel, all effed up channel, to the I am channel, the AM channel, right? Boom, we flip. And when we flip, right, then we are now in attunement to a completely different experience and a vibration of love. And once you have experienced it, it's impossible to trust your own petty strength again. And what's your own petty strength? The thinking self. You believe you can figure it out. Thinking, small self. I can judge my world, I can judge my future, and I know how to act based on my past. So it's constantly going from the past to the future, the past to the future. It's not what we were talking about a while ago, which is where we can get in touch with our higher self, being present. Moving the thinking self back to the bus, the back seat of the bus, right? It's still thinking, talking, doing its thing, but we're not giving it our awareness. Meditation is one of our great training grounds, if you will. And through the workbook lessons, for those of you that are doing those, you might start noticing he starts you out by saying, just consider this for 2 minutes. In other words, be present to this teaching for 2 minutes, this lesson for today. Eventually, he's got you doing like these 15, 20, 30-minute meditations. But he leads you gently into this practice. And all he's teaching you there really, honestly, is to be present, to consider a truth teaching, and allow your inner guidance to begin to help you rationalize and understand it, and you start to have an experience of insight and opening, and you begin to unlearn this demonstration from the world. You begin to no longer accept your own petty strength, right? Which is really your ability to think. God did not create you to be a thinker. Oh, I know, that's terrible to have to consider that. And I've had people that actually get mad at me for where I would suggest that, but I get that because we have so much invested in our ability to think through things, to control our world. It keeps us feeling safe, almost safe, yeah, even though we're still afraid. But in if you really want perfect safety, you have to let all of the thinking go and connect with, be the channel at the higher level of consciousness, higher energy, the attunement to the higher frequency of love. Good stuff. It's this power that keeps all things safe. Wow. I didn't even know that was coming up. How about that? Spirit has a great sense of humor. That's the power that keeps all things safe, because it's not diluted by the thinking mind, which is projecting illusion. I think it's this and I think it's that, and next thing you know, we're like, oh, I was wrong about that, right? Because the thinking mind is insane. It knows nothing really. It is through this power that the teachers of God look on a forgiven world. Now, forgiveness is so important, but he's not talking about here the forgiveness that we were taught by traditional theologians, because their idea was it more about atonement. Okay, I forgive you, you did something, and I know it's true, and I'm judging you. I know that you did it, but I'm going to be better than you, and I'm going to forgive you for what you did. Of course, you're going to have to go through a process of atonement and, go to jail for 10 years, whatever, to pay for your sins. You're guilty, you are. You're on the front cover of the top, what do they call it? The top half of the newspaper on Sunday. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about, right? And I express it this way. So you got to give this I give credit to my teacher, right? My guidance system says, okay, it's moving back before you gave judgment. So if I'm going to forgive myself for anything I've ever done, once I've done something, it's pretty hard for me to say, well, I didn't do that, right? But if I look at life that I'm living today in this awakened state of consciousness now, you know, like right now you're watching this on YouTube and we're right here with you right now. Whether you do this tomorrow or next week, doesn't matter, it's still right now. But if we do something, it appears that it's real because this is our reality. But when my mother drove up in the hot tub, that appeared to be real too. But I can forgive that experience because guess what? We can all agree that that was probably illusion, right? Yeah, it was probably illusion. And since it was illusion, I can forgive it. I can move back before I gave it judgment, right? That's what true forgiveness is. Because this is illusory too. Because this is a construct of thinking mind. And now that's a huge leap because it causes us to let go of our long-held commitment to our grasp of our reality. And if we trip through the light fandango too quickly, we can have a little psychotic break going on, you know, so it's nice to wade in. We don't want to be dropped off in the deep end of the pool too quickly, right? So that's what this teaching is doing, is wading us in. Some people say, why? You know, this is the simplest teaching and this is like the simplest book ever, right? It doesn't look like it because look, it's like all this work and it's like, why is it? Because you're just wading into it. So you're not it's the 2-minute meditation instead of the 20 minutes right off the bat. See, Jesus is very loving and understanding of your commitment to illusion, right? Absolutely. Have fun. Who would attempt to fly with the tiny wings of a sparrow when the mighty power of an eagle has been given them? And who would place his faith in the shabby offerings of the ego when the gifts of God are laid before him? What is it that introduces them to make the shift? First, they must go through what might be called a period of undoing. Seems like we were talking about that a few minutes ago. See, this just keeps coming around and around, right? What's the undoing? A belief in a world of victim consciousness or manifestor manipulation and the belief in a world of form, a construct of illusion, right? And it's no different than the dreams we have last night, at least in the regards that when you're in that state of mind, sleeping at night, you believe that's real too. You believe that everything you're experiencing is real. Yep, it looked just like Mom was in the hot tub in the back of that car. You know, it seemed just, and I was willing to accept that. In that moment, it's like, well, there's Mom, you know, driving up in the hot tub. So this is a period of undoing. This need not be painful, but it usually is. So experienced. Why? Because we've made so much commitment to the world as we believe it to be. But we also make that same commitment to the dreaming experience at night until we begin to doubt it. And when we begin to doubt it, that's when we wake up from it. And there is a death there, though it doesn't feel like a sting or a death. We're not experiencing is that. It's a letting go, really, of false concepts. That's not who I am. I'm safe at home in bed. I'm beginning to realize who I am, where I'm at, what my day is going to be, and those kinds of things, right? So this is a period of unlearning. This need not be painful, but it usually is so experienced. It seems as if things are being taken away. And this can be a little frightening for us early on the spiritual path. It does seem like some things are being taken away because we have made so much commitment to especially the manifestor manipulator level. Because a lot of us go through the process, in fact, come into a spiritual teaching in particular, in True Thought Ministry in particular, because they're like, I want more abundance in my life. And that's kind of the siren call of some of these teachings, if you will. Right? Because, if you raise your consciousness, you do have a spiritual edge. You do find that you're having an experience of typically more abundance in your life and more people, more joy, maybe even better relationships, and maybe your kids like you finally, or your parents are okay with you, you know, whatever's going on. Your dog quit biting you or whatever it might be. But the point is that can be a trap, right? It can be a trap because we get hung up on and we get sidetracked, right? It's kind of like we're on this, going down this hallway and there's all these rooms and this is an experience, and we go in there and man, this is great, and but we get trapped in that room because it's really a good experience. I got the house on the hill, I got the perfect spouse, I got the nice cars, I got the great life. I don't, and I can be trapped by that, literally. I can be trapped by that. I can be trapped by a particular teaching. And there are people that come and knock on my door sometimes, and they want me to agree with them about their particular teaching of religion, right? And in my discussions with them, which I'm always glad to do, I enjoy the challenge. I try to help them see that they're kind of stuck in the bird cage, like being stuck in a bird. You're in a bird cage, You can be stuck in that. And this teaching even is not the end-all, be-all. Can you become and experience enlightenment through study of A Course in Miracles? Absolutely. Absolutely. But what happens when you begin to experience that is that, guess what? There's more. There's always more, because creation is never-ending. God is never-ending. Love is always being made new. And your understanding of it is your ability to understand yourself, love, God. This is pure non-duality, is God is. You and God are one, right? So you're just continuing to have more and more of an understanding of yourself, your true self. Cool stuff. So we got to go through this period of unlearning, if you will. We doesn't need to be painful, but sometimes it can be. And it seems that things are being taken away. And it's rarely understood initially that their lack of value is merely being recognized. We're just starting to realize that maybe the big house on the hill isn't all that, it's cracked up to be. I got a buddy that he's a contractor, and he was telling me about this guy, and he's got a 2,700 square foot bedroom. Okay, that's cool. But can you see how that might be a trap? Literally? To build a house that's so big that you completely isolated yourself, not only from the world, but from everybody else in the house. Right? Like he said, the woman's bathroom was 2,700 square feet away from the husband's bathroom. I mean, just the separation. See, the ego is crazy, and it's all about separation. It's all about separation. You see, these are the crazy things that we do, right? And so we begin to lose value in those things. And I've certainly talked to people that have had tremendous success financially in their life, and they get to a point going, I did all that work and I got there, and then I realized, shit, that's not making me happy. And I'm doing, and then they let it all go. The next thing you know, they're living a very simple life and joyful, very joyful in that experience. So it's really, things aren't being taken away. It's just you're starting to take away your value of those things. How can lack of value be perceived unless the perceiver is in a position where she must see things in a different light? Now, I can only see things in a different light if I shift my mind, right? And I've only got two choices. I'm locked into the mind of the ego, the thinking self, or I'm letting it go, move to the back of the bus, please, and I'm allowing my higher self to basically begin to inform my experience of the world. So that's where, at channel consciousness, I'm literally going around going, are you there? Are you there? In other words, are we connected? I have, and I'm willing to have, continuous dialogue with the voice of wisdom in the heart. This is where we're moving from the mind to the heart. This is called wholeheartedness, where the mind and the heart begin to merge. And the voice that we're listening to is coming through the heart, the higher self, your right mind, your true self is being experienced now, and those thoughts are beginning to inform your experience of life. It's referred to in A Course in Miracles as nothing less than the Holy Spirit. But as he says, that's nothing more than your right mind. So this teacher of God is not yet at a point in which she can make the shift entirely internally entirely internally. And so the plan will sometimes call for changes in what seem to be external circumstances. These changes are always helpful. When the teacher of God has learned that much, he goes on to the second stage. Next, the teacher of God must go through a period of sorting out. This is always somewhat difficult because having learned that the changes in his life are always helpful, he must now decide all things on the basis of whether they increase the helpfulness or they hamper it. We're really beginning to sort through things and look at things and go, oh, I don't need that anymore. I don't need that fancy car. My life isn't going to be better if I get the perfect spouse, or if I have the right clothing, or if I have the right car or the right house, or I know the right people, or whatever. We literally begin to sort and sift through our experiences in life and the things that we have valued. To me, it's a lot like ultimately setting those toys aside as a child. Nobody told you to do that. You had those favorite toys. For me, I had a blankie. I love my blankie, and it went with me everywhere, right? And I used to twist the end of a corner up, and I would stick it in and out of my ear. It just felt so great. It was great, right? I love my blankie. But at some point, nobody told me I had to do that. I realized that it really had no value in my life anymore, and I set it aside. That's what we're talking about. It's just that simple. It's a maturing of mind, right? We're just continuing to evolve consciously through the levels of consciousness. Blankie and all. I still love my blankie, but I don't know where it's at. So the second step is this sorting out, right? So we find that many, if not most of the things that we value before were merely hinderers our ability to transfer what we've learned to new situations as they arise. You'll find as you sharpen your spiritual edge that you literally move from specifics to broader and broader generalizations of this teaching. And you look at things that you would spend a lot of time on the specific things and specific situations, and now you brush through them very quickly because you've got them, they're categorized over there in that particular, and so it becomes generalized to your entire experience. Now that's really when the spiritual edge is really working for you, because you're now entering the 70% plus area of joy and bliss, right? And when you get up to the mystic level, you're in the extreme 90%. It's like you're the guru master that everybody just wants to hang out with you, and they're telling you all their crap, and you're like, you don't care, because you know it's illusion. And you're not a thinking self here. You are the higher self being expressed. As Jay said, when you see me, you see the Father. That was literally his expression of that. Let's see what time it is. Oh, we're doing good. We got, you guys, you can pause if you need to and run to the bathroom, whatever. It's okay. I, on the other hand, can't do that right now. So we got about 20 more minutes, and we're going to see if we can get through this first characteristic of a teacher of God. So it takes great learning to understand that all things, events, encounters, and circumstances are helpful. It's only to the extent to which they are helpful that any degree of reality should be accorded them in this world of illusion. The word value can apply to nothing else. Everything, every experience is a teaching opportunity, a learning opportunity. Teaching and learning are one. Cause and effect are one. Giving and receiving are one. We're going from duality to non-duality. The third stage, we're moving along now, we're in third grade, through which the teachers of God must go can be called a period of relinquishment. If this is interpreted as giving up the desirable, it will engender enormous conflict. And this is a really tough area for most all of us, right? Because we really feel like, I just don't know what I enjoy anymore. You want to go to the movies? No. You want to turn on the TV? No. What do I enjoy doing? Just like it's a beginning to relinquish things in our life because we're just starting to, question the value of everything. And it's almost like the dark night of a soul a little bit. Well, for me, I went through a period of a couple of years just looking at things going, look at that. Everything's just disintegrating. Everything just keeps going to disintegrating. After a period of time, I began to shift and notice what was being born rather than what was appearing to be dying. And there was a shift for me in my experience. But I did go through quite a period of time studying A Course in Miracles where everything I was looking at, I just kept seeing that it was deteriorating, getting old and fading, my body, and as one thing, and also trees and houses and cars and everything seemed to be falling apart. And so I went through a period where everything just appeared to be disintegrating and falling apart, and I was relinquishing attraction to things. This could be interpreted as giving up the desirable, and it will engender enormous conflict. Few teachers of God can escape this distress entirely. There is, however, no point in sorting out the valuable from the valueless unless the next obvious step is taken. The third step is rarely, if ever, begun until the second is complete. Now, what was the second one, right? That's the sorting out. We've already kind of sorted things out. And now we're beginning to really relinquish our interpretation, our thinking mind, its judgment. That's really what we're giving up. And what we're starting to relinquish is our judgment of the world and our experience of being in the world. Therefore, the period of overlap is apt to be one in which the teacher of God feels called upon to sacrifice his own best interest on behalf of the truth. Now, I will tell you at this point, he's not saying sacrifice is important. In fact, he tells us in A Course in Miracles that you couldn't be further from the truth if you're making commitment to sacrifice at all. Right? You could not be further from the truth because there is no sacrifice in God, period, period, period. There is no sacrifice in love, regardless of which romantic movie you've been watching. There is no sacrifice in God or love. But it appears that it can be such, right? Therefore, the period of overlap is apt to be one in which the teacher of God feels called upon to sacrifice his or her own best interest on behalf of the truth. He's not realized as yet how wholly impossible such a demand would be. There's no possibility of loss in God. There's no possibility of sacrifice in God. He can learn this only as he actually does give up the valueless. Through this, he learns that where he anticipated grief, he finds a happy lightheartedness instead. Where he thought something was asked of him, he finds a gift bestowed on him. I want to read that again. Through this, he learns that where he anticipated grief, he finds a happy lightheartedness instead. Where he thought something was asked of him, he finds a gift bestowed on him. And to me, I mean, this can be in relationships. This can be in the work that we do. It can be in the things that we've defined ourselves as. And it's a relinquishment of those definitions. Again, it's a relinquishment of the judgment of the thinking mind. Now comes a period of settling down. This is a quiet time in which the teacher of God rests a while in reasonable peace. Now she consolidates her learning. Now he begins to see the transfer value of what he has learned. The transfer value, right? It's generalizable to all the other things that are going on in our life. Its potential is literally staggering, and the teacher of God is now at a point in his progress at which he sees it in it his holy way out. Give up what you do not want and keep what you do. If you find value, let it change you. If you don't find value, let it go, right? How simple is the obvious, and how easy to do. The teacher of God needs this period of respite. He has not yet come as far as he thinks, yet when he is ready to go on, he goes with mighty companions. I love this mighty companion. We are all here together in this now moment. If you're watching this video, we're all in this. I hope you can see that I am your companion, mighty companion. We're mighty companions here in the room, those of us that are here together tonight in this now moment. We all become mighty companions in A Course in Miracles, and you'll hear that term frequently in this teaching. Now he rests a while and gathers them before going on. We began to gather our mighty companions in this teaching. We want to surround ourselves with others that are beginning to awaken and move up and advancing through the levels of consciousness, because we need that support. And we have that support also from the non-physical entities that are our guides and our loved ones and the host of angels really that are surrounding us and nudging us forward in our journey. The next stage is indeed a period of unsettling. Well, it's almost like we've already gone through a lot of unsettling, and now this is more unsettling. Now must the teacher of God understand that he did not really know what was valuable and what was valueless. All that he really learned so far was that he did not want the valueless, and that he did want the valuable. Yet his own sorting out was meaningless in teaching him the difference. The idea of sacrifice, so central to his thought system, right, the thinking mind thought system, is all about sacrifice. That idea had made it impossible for him to judge. He thought he had learned willingness. And by the way, I mentioned willingness earlier. That's up in here in manifestor manipulator level. It's one of the aspects of the manifestor manipulator consciousness is willingness and allowance. We thought we got it there. Oh yeah, I'm willing, I'm allowing. But now we're beginning, as through this teaching, we're beginning to realize, well, I thought I got it, but man, I didn't get it at all. We take it to a whole different level. And now he must attain a state that may remain impossible for a long, long time. Don't let that be discouraging to you. We think a year or 2 years is a long, long time. It's not, right? And sometimes I joke with people, and in another 15 or 20 years, we'll get this, right? But guess what? The last 15 or 20 years went by pretty damn quick, didn't it? Right? And here we're advancing very quickly. As I said earlier, you can advance by many, many points, even in one teaching and in one session in A Course in Miracles or one reading in this textbook or the workbook lessons. Were not each step in this direction so heavily reinforced, it would be hard indeed. And finally, there is a period of achievement. It's here that learning is consolidated. Now what was seen as merely shadows before becomes solid gains, to be counted on in all emergencies as well as tranquil times. Indeed, the tranquility is their result. In perfect safety, I dissolve my mind into the perfect peace of God. See, the tranquility is what this is about. This is moving higher and higher in consciousness to these upper levels of peace, joy, and bliss, and tranquility goes right in there, right? This is the stage of real peace, for here is heaven's state fully reflected. From here, the way to heaven is open and easy. In fact, it is here. Who would go anywhere if peace of mind is already complete? And who would seek to change tranquility for something more desirable? What could be more desirable than this? You see, what he's done for us tonight is he's taken us step by step right through levels of consciousness. We start here with trust, courage, integrity. We begin to trust ourselves. We begin to trust that we can be self-honest with ourselves and with our partners, with the world, with our family, with our brothers and sisters, with our boss, with everyone around us. We begin to speak our truth. And we take a giant leap out of victim land into manifestor manipulator. And you may already be there. And if you're in this society, if you're in this group, if you're listening to this, you're already way up in here, right? And you may already be having experiences of love, the wagging tail, the purring kitten, that resonates already with you. And you're moving in and out of these levels of consciousness. But he's taken us through that tonight, just in this first discussion of the first level of the teacher of God, right? And where does he lead us to? Relinquishment of all of the manifesting, manipulating of the world of form, right? And just letting it go. And then this is when going from the 499 level to the 500 is huge. And then but it's like a light switch goes on. And this now we are in the realm of being in touch with the higher self. We're becoming wholehearted. We're becoming miracle ready at this stage of evolution of our consciousness. See, it's brilliant, right? It's just so brilliant. And I appreciate the opportunity to go through this for myself tonight, because it's been healing for me. And I hope for you too. So, I want to turn to the mighty companions in the room here. We got about 10 minutes we can play. So, what's coming up for you? What are you experiencing in this journey through consciousness tonight as, entertaining the idea of you being a teacher of God, you being a minister, and beginning to trust yourself? Do you feel any resistance to trusting yourself as a minister? How's that feel? Don't be shy. Go for it, John.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think there's always some fear of that, you won't have the answers to all the questions. But I think the more that you trust in yourself, probably the more those answers will just come automatically. Because it's the truth.
When we do,
And-
see, we start, the heart starts to open, and this learning, the higher self begins to pull from it. We read this about levels of consciousness, and we studied this about the teachers of God and trust, and then we're facing some situation, and we fall into the idea of trust. Well, I think I can just be willing to trust this. And when that happens, then we start being informed by our heart, by a higher octave, right? We can take that good deep breath and we say, well, in perfect safety, I can let go of my judgment of this thing. I can begin to trust what's going on out here. So that's really insightful, that you're seeing it that way, I think. I think that's powerful.
Yeah, I think all this stuff is powerful. It just brings a lot of peace, I think, to my heart. All the stuff that we go through, it just simplifies life so much that you really realize what's truly important. And it's not the everyday stuff that we seem to focus all our attention on.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But the everyday stuff gives us the opportunity. It's the ashram, and there were times when I actually went to monasteries and I just wanted to check out and just, I wanted to become, and I'd go to those places, and then I found out I was still there, right? And the thinking mind was still doing its thing, right? And while there were periods of time when I would withdraw from the world enough and for long enough periods of time that I really would go through long periods of no anger, very little judgment, lots of forgiveness, a lot of meditation. And I'm like, and then I go out to Walmart and, I'm right back into, judging, people, you're not going fast enough, right. You can fake it. I mean, not even fake it. You can pretend, or you can trick yourself into thinking that you're spiritually, and that's a little spiritual righteousness going on, right? That I'm getting this. But then you get out in the world, and people that are even close to you, very close to you, and that you love, and they can trigger you really quickly. That's why they're close to you. They know where all your buttons are, right?
Can you just re-explain again about the wholeheartedness thing? So, I mean, our heart, we think of our heart, as the center of our form being, but it's also really our true being, the child of God that we are created.
Yes.
And then that true being has the mind, which is the mind of God.
Yes.
So the wholeheartedness, you said it was going from the heart to the mind, or it was going from the mind to the heart?
Well, we're kind of starting out. Here. It's like we get dropped off into the world, right? And our family, our foundation that we've chosen, right? They're vibrating at a certain frequency of consciousness, right? And you can look back at your family of origin in this incarnation, and you can kind of see that a little bit, right? You can look back and kind of see that. And of course, when you were a child, they were establishing that foundation, right? And the first thing they're doing is really with the greatest of intentions of love, hopefully, and most often for many of us, they were just trying to prepare us, for the world, and teaching us to, get educated, be prepared, be able to navigate through the world and successfully, and fear this and don't go there and don't hang out with those kids and whatever. Don't go over to that creek and climb up in that damn tree and jump off in that creek, you're going to hurt yourself. So, well-intentioned, right? But it's where the thinking mind begins to be, the personality self begins to be created by us. And we start finding out what works for us, what we have success using, you know, what tools do we use? Is it to be the, you know, to be soft and meager, and that gets people to give us what we want, or is it to be the bully, and that gets us what we want? You know, we learn those patterns very early, but we're really forming the mind, the ego mind, the body mind, if you'll allow me to call it that. The body mind is the personality, the home of the personality self, right? So that's the first thing that we have to overcome. That's why this book is so thick. And he wrote it in this language that we don't normally read in or speak in, so that we'll slow down, not rush through it, and like, what in the hell is he saying? What does that mean? And we'll ponder it, and we'll let it speak to us. The teacher is in this book. It is you know, it's a book of self-study. And what I love to do for myself and hopefully for others is to bring it and flush it out, so that when I am reading the book, like we're doing tonight, we just read, you know, this short section in the Manual for Teachers, and we spent an hour and 15 minutes, you know, talking about this one aspect of this teacher of God, trust. And so when we begin to get it, right, then it begins to inform us. And so now we can remove the shield that we've placed around our heart. What is that shield? What does that look like? It's called bitterness. We've been protecting our heart from love. Yeah. We're protecting our heart, which we see as vulnerable. And everything is symbolic, you know, metaphoric. The body is really the symbolic symbol of the separated mind. So when we can look at the heart and say, okay, metaphorically, that's a symbol of the heart of the mind, the center of mind. We could call it the altar of the mind. And the higher self, the true self, the very center of all that is, this altar, if you know, we can look at it as an altar, that's your home. That's where you, the real you, resides. So once we push through the bitterness by seeing that those are all constructs of a self of fear, that begins to shatter. And then we can begin to be informed by this voice within the heart space, within the heart center. And we can look at the physical body's heart and see that it's at the center of all of our experience. And we can't be in existence physically without it. So symbolically, it's you know, we did a really good job, you know, by creating this metaphoric self, physical self. So we go from the mind, we break through the intellectual bind of these levels, the domain of the ego mind, thinking self. We begin to push through that by being present, by following spiritual teachings, and then we begin to connect, channeling. We begin to listen to the intuitive self, the higher self. It begins to channel through, and sometimes it's a feeling, you know, because we're present. Again, you know, an experience of being loving with someone that's close to you. You know, you shared some stories about spending some time with your family, and clearly in your story with me tonight, I really felt the energy that you were being very present. Yeah, it's awesome. And I feel that love in you, and it's exciting. And I'm being present with you in this moment. I know, as you said, you know, your dad's with us tonight.
Right.
Right here with us.
Yep.
Because you can't be separated from
That's
love.
right.
Or anyone that we've ever loved.
Right.
It's just so cool.
It's a wonderful experience, yes.
And I know you feel it because I feel it.
Yep,
Yeah.
definitely.
So that's the wholeheartedness, right? The miracle mindedness is where we begin to merge the thinking self. We embrace it. We embrace all things. We love all things. We accept all things, and we transcend all things. We just are taking the thinking self, the egoic mind. We're just kind of taking it out of the driver's seat, okay, and putting it in the back seat, and we're still loving it. It's not going. It's going to go for the rest of the ride with us. We don't kill it, we don't destroy it. We're embracing it. We're accepting it. We're just removing its desire to be in control of our life, and we're turning to the heart and letting the voice of love be our guide in all of our experiences. And so that, to me, is, I guess, my best attempt to try to help you understand what wholeheartedness is, because it's the whole self. It's the reintegration. We leave pieces of ourself all over the place. If I judge somebody over there, I just left a piece of myself over there in that judgment, right? And it's lodged in there now until I forgive it, move back before I gave judgment. So that's the reintegration of the self over time through this practice of evolving self-consciousness.
Makes a lot of sense. That was good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Oh, it's 8:30. So I guess we have to say goodbye. But we'll be back, right? So let's take a good deep breath, and we'll close out with a prayer. I want to say thanks to everyone for playing with us tonight, being in this wonderful experience of love and conversation of A Course in Miracles. So let's take that good deep breath. Center yourself as the energy of the Creator in action. That'd be you, right? As the energy of the Creator in action, in perfect safety, we release all tension. As the energy of the Creator in action, in perfect safety, we attune ourselves to the upper room, to a higher consciousness level. We move up in consciousness, and we simply become present now as we share this word of wisdom from our brother Jesus. Truth answers every call we make to God, responding first with miracles and then returning unto us to be itself. Forgiveness, truth's reflection, tells me how to offer miracles and thus escape the prison house in which I think I live. Your holy child, your holy son, is pointed out to me, first in my brother, then in me. Your voice, capital V voice, your voice instructs me patiently to hear your word and give as I receive. And as I look upon your child today, your son, your daughter, I hear your voice, Father, instructing me to find the way to you as you appointed that way shall be. Behold, my brothers and sisters, their sinfulness, and be you healed. Be us all healed together. So as we go forth this week in perfect safety, we allow only that which expresses love, only that which is in alignment with the perfect peace of God, the tranquility of the mind of the awakened self, being present to whoever may be around us, being present to the situations that may be around us, and being present to our own self, our own heart. We allow that shield of bitterness around our heart, let it go. We don't need to protect ourselves from love. Love is what we are. And then we allow that voice to come through, to be our experience in the present moment as we go forth and share this energy with our brothers and sisters in the world. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you, my dear brothers and sisters, for being here, all of you. It's been my absolute pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you and God bless.